Hi. So today we are discussing about structural changes, and economic growth. So as we discussed in the modern growth theories, like neoclassical growth models or endogenous growth theories, at the steady state, the economy achieves balanced growth path where the per capita capital, per capita output, consumption, etc., grow at a constant rate. And when they are growing at the constant rate, then the positive per capita growth is sustained over a longer period of time. Okay, basically the economy grows perpetually, which reflects the real experience of economies like that of US, UK, which have been growing for last 200 years or so. Now, we also discussed that the experience of the growth experience of the developing countries when they migrate from underdeveloped towards developing and developed, that phenomenon, that experience is not explained by modern growth theories. So, certain characteristic feature of this economic experience, the experience of economic progress, moving from underdeveloped poor to gradually developing and rich country status, the economy witnesses certain transformations and changes. There is industrialization, there is urbanization, improvement in various human development indicators, including literacy, health standards, etc. And these changes are not incorporated in modern growth theories. Then we discussed that Acemoglu 2009 in chapter 20 it basically presents the structural change and economic growth, where it attempts to present an unified framework where the structural changes and the growth experience of rich economies as suggested by growth theories, where these two reconcile. So in the previous video we discussed about the demand side factors, and using demand side factors in the unified framework we explained, particularly using idea of Engel and consummate Rebello Jai, that in the process of economic growth there is an unbalanced growth within the economy across its sectors. Like the agriculture grows at a slower rate, and manufacturing grows at a faster rate compared to that, and services grows at a even faster rate compared to manufacturing, basically led by the demand side considerations. So Engel's idea that as income grows, people consume less of foodstuff. Basically, in their consumption basket, the share of food items will be less compared to the share of industrial and services items. So, using that idea, we explained how we can explain the basically the increasing share of services and industry and falling share of agriculture, this change in composition as the economy grows. And similar experience or similar features are also observed in the job market, particularly the workforce. The workforce gradually shifts from agriculture to industry and to services. So this structural change is consistent with long-term economic growth as per this unified framework. Now, in this lecture, what we're trying to do will be using supply side factors to explain this structural change. So, basically, there are two papers which forms the basis for this idea. One is by Baumol, 1967, where he suggests that if there are two sectors in economy, and if one sector witnesses rapid technological progress compared to the other sector, So naturally, the first sector, which witnesses higher rapid technological progress, will grow at a faster rate compared to the other sector. So, for example, using this idea, if there are two sectors in economy, say agriculture and industry, and if the technological progress in industry is high, then naturally industry will be growing at a faster rate compared to agriculture. Now there is another paper by Acemoglu and Guerreri, which 2008, this reference is there in Acemoglu 2009, which we are using as reference, the modern growth theory. Let me show you again. Our reference is this one, Introduction to Modern Growth, Economic Growth by Daron Acemoglu. And in this, in chapter 20, we have a discussion on structural change, basically economic growth and economic development. There we are discussing structural change and structural transformation along with economic growth. Okay, so Acemoglu-Guerreri paper basically further extended the idea of Baumol. In fact, there have been some subtle and compelling reasons to explain that even if technological progress is same across two sectors, say you have agriculture and industry, even if technological progress is same across the two, if there is capital deepening, then and if there are differences in factor proportions, then there will be unbalanced growth. Despite technological progress being same in two sectors, still because of capital deepening and different factor proportions, one sector may grow at a rapid rate and another can grow at a slower rate within the framework of modern growth theories. So a couple of things I'll sort of clarify before we move on. So what we mean by capital deepening? We define capital deepening as a situation where growth rate of capital in the production process is faster than growth rate of labor. So for example, if there are two factors of production used, one is capital denoted by KT and other is labor denoted by LT at period T. So if KT dot by KT, which represents the growth of capital, is higher than LT dot by LT, which represents growth of labor, then we'll say that there is capital deepening. Okay, so basically we can define this way: if KT dot by KT is greater than LT dot by LT, we'll say there is capital deepening. Now, there could be different factor proportions. Two sectors may be using different factor proportions. So how to define factor proportion? Let us define factor proportion by, say, sigma 1, where sigma 1 is share of capital in overall output. Say if output is Y and the price of the product is P, then the value of product is Py, and if interest payment is R, rate of interest rate is R, and capital is K, then the share of capital in output is RK, and the ratio of RK over Py. So the ratio of capital share in total output. Okay, this we denote it as sigma, which we say this factor proportion. Okay, so if in the two industries or two sectors, say agriculture and industry, let agriculture denote by sector 1 and let us denote industry by sector 2. If sigma 1 is less than sigma 2, we'll say there is different factor proportion. Okay, so sigma 1 will be R1 K1 over P1 Y1, where 1 refers to agriculture and R is rate of interest, K is capital, P is price, Y is output. Okay, so similarly for K2, if sector industry is denoted by K2, so sigma 2 will be R2 K2 over P2 Y2. Okay, so basically if there is different in factor proportion, so then sigma 1 is not equal to sigma 2, and this is the way we define sigma, as I told you. Okay. Now technological progress is balanced if a1 t dot by a1 t is equal to a2 t dot over a2 t. So if a t stands for technology at time t, then at dot over at represents growth rate of technology. Okay, so if across the two sectors the growth rate of technology is same, okay, then we'll say a1 dot t over a1 t is equal to a2 dot t over a2 t. Okay, so then technological progress is balanced when this condition holds. Okay, so these are some of the basics before we go for discussing the supply side factor of unbalanced growth, basically, where we'll see that in the process of economic growth how there can be structural changes using this. So now, as I said, the idea of Baumol is if a1 dot t over a1t is greater than a2 dot t over a2t, then naturally the first sector is will grow at a rapid rate, right? Acemoglu-Guerrieri is going further. They are telling even if the technological progress is balanced, right? Even if when a1t dot over a1t is equal to a2 t dot over a2t, still then there could be unbalanced growth if there is capital deepening. Okay, that is, the growth rate of capital is higher compared to growth rate of labor, and if there are different factor proportions. Okay, so if sigma 1 is less than sigma 2 and there is capital deepening, then second sector will grow at a rapid rate compared to the first sector, right? Now this idea we can explain in the overall the framework of neoclassical model, which we have been discussing. So the consumption behavior at the moment where there is no change here. Basically, in the standard model, the infinite living household, from his preferences, we are deriving the the demand curves, etc. We can keep that same. Only there is a difference from the production side. Okay, so basically from production side, let us assume that the economy produces two types of goods, maybe agricultural goods and industrial goods. So agricultural goods, let us denote as at sector 1, are produced in sector 1, and the industrial goods are produced in sector 2. So our total output consists of output from sector 1 and output from sector 2. So total output Y consists of output from sector 1 and output from sector 2. Now the production function of these two sectors are denoted this way. So for the first sector, it is A1 multiplied by G1 as a function of K1 and L1, and T refers to time. Similarly for the sector 2. And market clearing conditions require that K1 plus K2 is equal to K, L1 plus L2 is equal to L. Now, using the solo growth accounting framework which we had used earlier, we can basically derive that y1 t dot over y1 t will be equal to a1 t dot over a1 plus sigma 1 t k1 t dot over k1 t plus 1 minus sigma 1 k, this is L1 t dot over L2 t. Similarly, we can have it for the second sector. Okay, and in the solo model, without technological progress, the basic model, there we had derived from the profit maximizing behavior of the firm that R is equal to F prime small k and W is equal to Fk minus K F prime K. Okay, so here small k is capital labor ratio. Using a similar thing here, basically what I'm trying to tell you, from profit maximizing behavior of the firm, we had derived a formula for R interest rate and W wage rate. Okay. Now in solo model without technological progress, that formula was simpler. Now in this model with technological progress, and there we had one good, so the price, we didn't have explicit price. Here we have two goods, so we can have explicit price P1 for the first good, P2 for the second good. So correspondingly, our formula for R here will be P1 A1 P1 multiplied by A1 multiplied by G1 prime K1. So this is like F prime K. Okay, so this is like F prime K, and that this function was G, so it is G1 prime K, and price and technology added. The same will be true for the second sector, sector 2, where R will be equal to P2 into A2 into G2 prime K2. Okay, so this is Z2. There is a correction here. This is G2 prime K2, and formula for W for the first sector will be P1 A1 G1 K1 minus G1 prime K1 into K1. Okay, this is like Fk minus F prime K into K, right? And similarly, same for the second sector will be P2 into A2 into G2 K2 minus G2 prime K2 multiplied by K2. Okay. Now, from this, what we are trying to prove, we are basically, see if we are trying to prove that if there is same balanced technological progress in both the sectors, and with that, if there is capital deepening and different factor proportions, then growth rate across the two sectors will be different. Okay, so the contradiction of this proposition is, if growth rate if the technological progress in the two sectors are similar, okay, and if the factor proportions are similar, then growth rate has to be similar. If we contradict this, then we can prove the contradiction that if factor proportions are different, then growth rates will be different despite technological progress being similar. Okay, so for that, what we'll do, this equation 1, okay, let us differentiate this with respect to time, right? So differentiating these two things with respect to time, and using the fact that technological growth is similar across two sectors, that is A1 T dot over A1 T is equal to A2 T dot over A2 T. This is basically equal across sector. And then if there is balanced growth, if growth rate of sector 1 is equal to growth rate of sector 2, then this will hold for their prices. Okay, so if growth rate across both the sectors are same, that is growth is balanced, then P1 T dot over P1 T will be equal to P2 T dot over P2 T. Okay, so using these two facts, that if growth rates are similar and if this holds for the prices, okay, then from differentiating both these lines with respect to T under star, we will get this. We will get that G1 double prime K1 over G1 prime K1 multiplied by K1, okay, whole multiplied by K1 dot over K1. This whole thing will be similar, will be same for the similar thing for the second sector. For the first sector and the second sector, this will be same. What I am trying to tell you, we are differentiating t, I mean the star with respect to t. One is r equal to p1 a1 into g1 prime k1. Another is r equal to p2 a2 g2 prime k2. Okay. Now, after differentiating with respect to time, we are using these two facts that there is similar the technological progress is same across sector and growth is same across the sector. So consequently, this also holds. Under this, from after differentiating star with respect to t, we will be getting this. Okay, so let us denote this entire term by q1 and denote this entire term by q2. Okay, so just remember this. Then let us differentiate the formula for wt from this double star with respect to t, and using these three things, that technological progress is same, this holds for the prices, and q1 q2. From that we can get this, that sigma 1 over 1 minus sigma 1 into q1 is equal to sigma 2 over 1 minus sigma 2 into q2. Okay, so basically from this what we are getting, that if sigma 1 is equal to sigma 2, then this is consistent with balanced growth, right? If the growth rate of the first sector is equal to growth rate of the second sector, then sigma 1 will be equal to sigma 2, right? If sigma 1 is different from sigma 2, then this is inconsistent with the assumption that growth is balanced. So this way it is proved that if technological progress is same across agriculture and industry, then difference in factor proportion will lead to difference in growth across the sector when there is capital deepening, right? So in other words, if the factor proportion in agriculture is different from factor proportion in industry, particularly if the share of capital in output is high in industry compared to share of capital in output in agriculture, then even if technological progress is same in both the sectors and there is capital deepening, still the growth rate of agriculture will be higher compared to growth rate of the services, right? So this way, from the supply side, we can prove that within the overall growth framework, as the economy progress, because there are differences in factor proportions, there are difference in growth rate of sectors within the economy. Particularly as the industry, in industry their share of capital increases compared to agriculture, then the growth rate of industry becomes higher compared to growth rate of agriculture. Okay, so that's how it is suggesting there are structural changes. So this unified framework is consistent with our modern growth theories, which suggest that economy can grow in a balanced growth path at steady state level. This is facilitated by technological progress. So basically we discussed earlier that if technological progress happens at the rate of g and the population growth is n, then of course in different growth models things will be little different, but largely in most of the models we found that the growth of output will be n plus g, growth rate of per capita output will be z, growth rate of capital will be n, growth rate of per capita capital will be 0, and growth rate of consumption, per capita consumption will be z. Okay, so that balanced growth path can be maintained, okay, once the economy reaches the steady state level. And in between, in the process, there will be structural changes because of the supply side factors, which we just discussed. So this way, these presents, the lecture now and the previous one, which we discussed about demand side factors, they provide an unified framework where structural change and economic growth can be explained. Okay, so for reference, you use Introduction to Modern Economic Growth by Daron Acemoglu, 2009, and chapter 20. Thank you.